I'm already nervous. Like, where do I start?
Don't be nervous. Oh, and the other thing is that, see, like, I'm leaving the screen on.
Yep.
Don't look at the screen.
Okay.
Look at
Yep.
This is a case of the Jills. You know, that's the channel that you turned on. But today it looks a little different because we have someone special with us today. This is Addie. And Addie is, well, what are you?
I am a cyclist.
Okay.
I'm a ultra runner in sheep's clothing. I am a journalist. I'm currently working in tech, which was a little unplanned, but here I am 2 years later.
Here she is.
Colorado native, infatuated with mountains and the outdoors.
So I've asked Addie to chat with us today because she has a super interesting story that I think a lot of you will really want to hear. We're going to be talking about all of her history with overtraining, amenorrhea. We're going to talk about some of the past, some of the present, some of the future. She's somebody who is currently on the journey. You're always hearing from me, like you must be sick of me by now. You're always hear from me talking about my story and what I've been through. But here's an awesome person, athlete, multi-talented, and super busy, by the way, woman who is trying to figure this out. And I've been lucky enough to have met her right through the channel that you're watching me on right now. So I'm really grateful that she's here chatting with us today and going to tell you her whole story. So where do we begin?
All right, well, I want to say first and foremost, I wouldn't be here without this lovely lady. This is a long story, and as we will come to realize, it's a little disjointed.
Let's start with the easy parts. So how many years have you been without a period?
4.5. Prior to that, it was irregular, but I wasn't really conscious of it, so it's been 4.5 years, not a thing. Except for one time after I broke my shoulder, I had 4 weeks off and got a little surprised, but it lasted like a day and a half.
You guys are used to me talking about amenorrhea and overtraining at the same time, and Addie is a person for whom those two things coexisted, but not always. So did you have a time where you were without a period, but your training was not giving you problems?
Absolutely, and I think a lot of the symptoms I wasn't totally aware of, as most of us tend to be a little bit blind to. But I was performing really well. There was, I got my pro contract in mountain biking when I didn't have a period. I have done all of my most, on paper, physical accomplishments without a period.
How do you feel about that now?
It's definitely interesting. It doesn't make me think that it's impossible to do it otherwise, but I think that we have to start somewhere with getting to that level of achievement, and unfortunately most of us do it the wrong way, which is too much.
That's definitely true.
It's quality over quantity, and I don't think I believed that for years.
You think you were more quantity driven in your training?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Tell me about the whole situation with when you lost your period. A lot of times we say that when someone loses their period, it's either a sharp decrease in calories and weight because like they get really thin and someone will tend to lose their period, and sometimes it's a real sharp increase in training that will seem to throw a monkey wrench into everything. And which do you think, in your opinion, was it that kind of set things off for you?
I think it was definitely an increase in training. So previously, which I'm sure we will cover, I chronic undereater my entire life, and so I think that was just fuel for the fire, was overtraining. And just increasing little by little, but it became moderate to excessive very quickly.
Okay.
But I wasn't aware. I didn't feel like it was excessive.
Did you feel less power on the bike? Did you feel that was your training getting better, or was it getting worse?
It would get better, and then through this journey, it would progressively get worse. But it was never consistent. I never was seeing these consistent gains. And when it started to get worse, it just was a complete downfall. I don't think I was as self-aware when I started riding a lot. I was genuinely doing it out of love for riding my bike. So it was probably 2013, coincidentally, when I lost my period for that I was really heavily invested in road racing, and I was training a lot. I was training hard. The intensity was up. The volume was up. I sustained an injury, and then took some time off, took a couple months off. Not off though. It's never been off.
It's never really off.
You never turn it all the way off. So in that time, I sort of reevaluated my priorities. But my priorities went from bike racing to training for an ultramarathon. So,
But never, your priorities were never, I haven't gotten a period.
No, and so I didn't really recognize, as we've talked about, and one thing that I'm so grateful for is this coming to attention, because it wasn't a point of conversation, especially in the cycling community. Women didn't talk about it, and I don't know when I realized that it was weird. I don't think I thought about it as a problem. I think that in my head it was, oh, I just exercise a lot and so I don't get my period. I didn't realize the repercussions.
So can you talk to us about your fueling? Did your fueling and caloric intake increase as your training increased, or do you feel like you did not make that connection between having to eat more because you were now doing more?
So I was intentionally not eating more because I figured if I upped my volume, I'd lose weight. So the idea is that the smaller you are and the higher your power is, the faster you'll go uphill. Not everyone is a climber per se, but the more power you have on the hills, you really have a big advantage. And I personally just enjoyed climbing. So that was something I wanted to be a climber, but I don't know if that was also, I wanted to be a climber because I wanted to be skinny. It was if I wanted to be skinny, I needed a reason, and that reason was I wanted to be a climber.
In order to fit like sort of the perfect profile of a climber, you knew you were gonna have to drop weight.
Correct.
So like achieving that goal was a weight goal, but because it was like synonymous with a climbing goal. All right.
Yep.
That makes sense. I want to ask you about your symptoms that you experienced going into overtraining. Like, had you already lost your period at that point, or did that come later?
I definitely already lost my period. Number one, hair loss, which you can't tell, but I have a large head of hair. I would shower and I would kind of just pull out clumps of hair and not really think much of it. It was just, I have a lot of hair. But I started noticing, as Jill has these adorable baby hairs she likes to talk about.
That's right.
I started to notice that those on me were going away, and that was always a very definitive characteristic of my appearance.
What else did you notice?
Insomnia like crazy. That was...
Did you wake up?
Yes, I would wake up. I could fall asleep. I would, get home from training and be like, oh, I can't wait to sleep tonight.
Right.
And then 2 a.m. and would not go back to bed. I was working as a barista at the time, and I had to be up at 4:30 some mornings, so I'd get up at 2. And,
that's helpful for
it was really great.
Cortisol.
Yeah,
That's
it's
good.
really good.
Yeah.
Especially when you're overcompensating then with espresso and then training and
So wait a minute. Let me just paint this picture again, just in case we missed this at home. Works at a coffee shop, so there's a little caffeine intake.
A little bit.
Just a little bit. No sleep. Insomnia. This is great.
Yep.
Shocking.
Yep.
Okay. So you would wake up in the middle of the night. When you woke up in the middle of the night, like, what did you feel? Did you have any, like, were you sweaty?
Yes.
Were you hungry?
Oh my God, all of the above. So I would consistently wake up, and it would be that pit of hunger where there's no turning back from that, because I would have the battle with myself almost every night where it'd be like, I'm too hungry to eat, but I'm too tired.
Lazy to get up.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So I would sit on my couch with my laptop on my stomach for like 3 hours having this internal debate of I shouldn't eat more. It was always not even I'm too tired. It was I'm too tired and I shouldn't. But then I could not physically sleep. So I would have to shove something in my face just to fall asleep.
Right.
Again, after, a few hours of being awake.
Yes.
Occasionally I would just ignore that and go ride at 4:30 in the morning, so that's healthy. And then the sweating, I would wake up and have soaked through
The night sweats kind of thing.
Yeah.
So what else did you notice, like, in your body? Like, anything, like, in your mind? Or
Yeah. So one thing, and again, I totally took this for granted, but my brain fog was unbelievable. So in the midst of all of this, I was also in college, and I was a philosophy major, and so lots of reading, lots of writing. In the last year that I'm kind of painting the picture of my my end of overtraining or my wall that I hit.
You're the wall you slammed into.
The wall I slammed head first into. I realized that I would try to read a book, I would try to write, I mean, just the most basic things that I used to spend all of my time doing, and it would be like monkey with symbols in my brain.
Yeah.
I mean, there was nothing there. And I would have conversations with people, and I noticed that I was forgetting my words. I was stumbling. I'm clearly, as you can tell, I'm a little bit of a nervous talker. I'm not the most articulate, but it was becoming unreal. I mean, I would be having a conversation like this with someone, and then I'd just trail off.
You shared something with me that actually made me feel really good, which is your story about like feeling depressed about training.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something I thought I was the only person in the world.
My world stopped when I heard Jill say this. So when I broke my shoulder, I have a sweet scar.
That's awesome.
Dude stick scars, right?
Yeah.
So it was, I say this without a shadow of a doubt, it was the best thing that happened to me in that period in my life. It made me reconnect with family, reconnect with friends. I started taking walks. I started resting. It just was the most glorious 6 weeks of my life.
So you had this like glorious time of being off, but still there was a lingering kind of sadness.
Yeah, so that time was great. Getting back on my bike was even better. I had this newfound appreciation for it. I was not training. I was just having the time of my life. Everything was great.
So what was not great?
When I got back into training for racing specifically, and following a training plan, and it was much more intense, I was so depressed, and I wouldn't admit it to myself, but it was the looming feeling of the need to train, knowing that was my body's way of saying, you have got to stop. We can't do this. We cannot keep doing this. So I
still felt this like intrinsic need to train.
Yep. And it was heightened because at that point, honestly, and I didn't know it at the time, but it had lost any sort of appeal. I did not want to be doing it.
Then
it was a job.
Why were you doing it? Like, why were you doing it?
It was a job. It was my way of glorifying what we all like to characterize as the type A personality. I was living in a place that is celebrated for type A people. It's a world of professional athletes. You cannot turn in any direction without running into someone who's been in the Olympics. It's pretty crazy. And so I just adopted that as though that was my way of...
Like that was like your standard. So you're like, well, this is fine because this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Everyone's
right. It was the supposed to be doing.
Right.
So I would go out to do intervals. My coach would say, hey, it's been snowing. You should do them on the trainer. And I'd be like, nah, I want to be outside. And I would do this, and it breaks my heart to say this and to hear other people have had the experience, but I would go ride on roads that I knew would be icy, that I knew would be slippery, that I knew would be covered in road gravel, just so I could maybe crash and be off the bike. I mean, anything. I would ride with headphones in. I would do all the things that you're just not really supposed to do because I wanted some tangible thing to get me off the bike.
This like kills me. You would put your life at risk to have a reason to really, what we're saying here is give yourself peace.
Yes.
So you would rather hurt yourself than give yourself peace.
And at the time, yeah, it's heartbreaking. And I know so many people have, I mean, this is something that's really not talked about. I don't know if a lot of people have this experience, but I do know when someone gets an injury and the doctor says, you know, you need to take 4 weeks off. I know for some people that's a sigh of relief. It's a recipe for relaxation, even though it's...
except for the people for whom that becomes anxiety because they're like, I'm not training, I'm going to gain weight, what's going to happen?
Yeah, and interestingly, I had peace with that. For those it was like this blissful 4 weeks. That's a big thing, is talking about finding an excuse or justification for stopping, because full circle, amenorrhea is a damn good reason to stop.
That should have been the first thing to make you
that
stop.
should have been the first thing, and most of us just don't see that as a problem. We see a broken bone as a problem.
It's true that we do. We see something like, we can see it,
Yep.
and we say, this broken bone is stopping me from doing my sport.
If you can if you're physically incapable, you're physically incapable. You can't, I mean...
But we say, I just don't happen to get my period, but I can still go out and ride.
Yeah,
or I can still
can't
go out and
have
run.
babies, but I can run 100 miles.
Ugh. We're not very smart.
No.
No. So there's one little detail that we haven't gotten to yet, and Addie's going to tell us about it in the next video, since we're going to have part 2. And why don't you tell us a little bit about what we're going to hear in part 2?
So in part 2, we are going to talk about the big elephant in the room, which is my history with an eating disorder. I know that that is not unique in this, unfortunately. The number of different things it's morphed into, I mean, it is the least fluid thing I've ever experienced, is this eating disorder. I've had my struggles, I've had my fair share of experiences, but this is hands down, I can't even figure it out today.
Well, we will try in video number 2, which wait for. Thanks so much for watching part 1 with Addie, and we hope that you'll stick around and wait for part 2.
And thank you so much for having me, Jill. I really appreciate it, and I thank you all for watching, and I hope that my stupidity can help you in your journey.
That's my goal. I'm stupid so you don't have to be. Perfect.
Stupid sisters.
Yes, it's hot in Denver!
We got this.
Okay. Can you see my bra? You probably can.
Or you can for sure see mine.
Hey.